Yeah, it does, and it's been alarming, I think, for the last 10 years. I've been kind of following this quite closely, and it's pretty scary stuff, I think. You've got a lot of people who are denying, I think, the impact of man-made global warming. I mean, I can see that there's an argument for saying that these things come in cycles, and, you know, Ice Age 12 years ago and all this, but 12,000 years ago, but I think we're getting to a point where, you know, global life support systems are, I think, are really going to shut down. You know, not in my lifetime. I think in your lifetime you've got a lot to worry about.
I think global warming is very alarming now because it affects the whole climate of the world. You know, and a lot of our climate and environment is governed by the climate, you know. If there's climate changes, it affects the supply of oxygen, you know, vegetation, animals, growth, sea life.
Oh, very little, I'm afraid to say. I think, like most people, you kind of think, well, you know, what impact can you have individually? I mean, I think we're fairly conscious of kind of wasting resources, fairly conscious of things like water, pretty conscious of recycling, but you know, to my shame, I don't think we do anything like as much as we could do.
I think on a personal level, we should practice how we can, you know, conserve, for example, recycling. On a, you know, personal level, I practice recycling. You know, we do not simply just throw away our things. You know, we try to recycle as much as possible. You know.
Well, I think it's all down to the major powers. It's down to China. It's down to the US, who are responsible for the overwhelming percentages of carbon emissions and so on. I think carbon trading is a good idea, and I think it's got at least the kind of things can be solved on two levels. I mean, one, individuals, but more importantly, probably on the on governmental levels. And unless the big powers, China, India, Europe, the US, actually are much more prepared to kind of put money into reduction of emissions, I think we're screwed, to be honest. I mean, the US especially, 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's energy usage, and it's just clearly unsustainable. You know, I just don't see where we're going to go from here.
I think education is very important. I find that this is very severely lacking in the schools, you know, whereby school children are never taught, not even taught, they're not even exposed to all this. I think all this has to start when they're young.
Well, I mean, developed nations, clearly, because, you know, I mean, in the West, you know, if you look at Europe, you know, Europe and America, North America, who are by far the world's biggest polluters, you know, we've chopped down our trees already, and now we're trying to prevent countries like India and China from developing. And, you know, there's always going to be a kind of a short-term mentality where you're looking to, you know, governments are going to be looking at how they're going to help the current voters to survive and develop. And to be honest, unless, I mean, you know, China especially, which is a massive polluter, but then, you know, it's a kind of a catch-22. I mean, you know, what are you going to do? You're going to stop development? I honestly can't see any way out of this. Maybe nuclear. I mean, you know, I was never a big fan of nuclear power, but I've got a horrible feeling that it's going to be it's the only viable solution at the moment. So I think certainly it's Western developing countries have got to take a lead. But how are they going to force developing nations to not develop? I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, we're already at what, 6.5 billion population. projected to rise, I think, to, is it 9 billion by 2050, something like that. Wow! Very difficult to see how the planet can support those kinds of numbers. But then again, we've been saying that, ever since, for the last 50 years, when it got to 3 billion, how are we going to do it? 4, 5, 6. We seem to find a way to do it, but long term, I think we're going to be heading back to a kind of an agrarian economy, to be honest, because the oil is running out, and carbon fuels are, by the middle of this century, will have disappeared. We'll be back to a Mad Max environment, where people are living much simpler lives. But I don't know. I mean, it strikes me that that we've always had kind of doomsayers. And so far, progress has kind of marched in one direction. But there have been periods in history where world development stopped, and in fact it's gone backwards. That we've had big chunks of time in different cultures where things have gone backwards. Maybe that's going to happen again. But I fear for your generation. I really do.